Hi, folks. This is Rabbi Kerry Chaplin from Shul. Welcome to Resist Burnout, a 15-minute weekly call to restore and regenerate and to return to grounding in who you are in this time when fire is just sucking all of the oxygen out of our environment. Whatever your background, your personal rituals, your practices or religions, we at Lab Shul hope that this will be a space for you. Whether you're calling in every week now, or this is your first time calling, or if you're listening later in the week, I know you know the need. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling in and listening at all. I find myself compiling a list of the things that many of us might be thinking about, might be even despairing of, and I find myself doing this every week. I'm not sure how helpful it is, but I'll continue to do it now, just to name the things that might be on our hearts and on our minds. The travel ban is taking full effect. There are fires that are burning in Southern California. The immoral document that is this tax bill, both in content and in process. The DREAM Act that many of us are fighting for, especially a Clean Dream Act. The current threat to temporary protected status program, those suffering natural and human disasters around the world. And then for those of us in New York, another terror attack this morning, mostly foiled, mostly not carried out, with only the attacker himself being seriously injured. And honestly, I personally have a gratitude around that. And it was just brought to my attention that apparently the current administration is removing the requirement for airlines to publish checked bag fees in advance, which just pisses me off. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to despair of, and that's why we need these practices with each other. That's why we gather on this call together, and we're honored today that Rhonda Rosen will again be leading us in meditation. And then later, a dear friend, Asher, will be offering us some words of inspiration about self-compassion. So who is on today's call? We have people from New York and California and Pennsylvania and Maryland. And I know there are people here working for immigrant rights and for queer rights and for refugees. There are peacemakers and troublemakers, people who are planning to run for office, parents, and all of us pursuing the world that we aspire to live in. After today's call, I want to encourage you to post a picture of where you are, of yourself, or just a few words or something that reflects on what's on your heart after today's call. We gather to practice our own helpfulness. We have just this one self and a lot of work to do with it. Calling from outside of Pittsburgh, Rhonda has been a mindfulness meditation practitioner since '73 and leading mindfulness meditation for 10 years. And she's again with us today. Rhonda, thanks for being here.
Hi, Kerry. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, so the fire is burning across Southern California, literally and symbolically emblematic of the horrific hellishness of our times. The hot, dry, biting winds blow off the desert, supercharged by the changing atmospheric conditions and exacerbated by the depletion of groundwater. Fire hits the rich and the poor alike. Everyone has to breathe the same acrid air with the same health risk. Everyone loses the contents of their homes, but the rich will have a greater possibility of recovery, greater ease for seeking health care and rebuilding their lives. The poor will not have these resources. I have no idea what the undocumented will do, and the wildlife will not make it. For those still in danger and those trying to clean up and resurrect their lives, our hearts break. We worry for them. We will try to figure out how to be helpful. And we ask, are we safe? Are we on the verge of destroying our human habitat? What are we doing to each other? The smoke and ash and sparks of hatred seem to be taking over who we are as a nation. That is why we resist as if our lives depend on it, because our lives do depend on it. We need to use our internal resources strategically, pick our battles, rest between fights, have faith in the integrity of what we do, independent of the outcome. So these few minutes are a time to rest. Without rest between battles, we'll become more depleted. Unmitigated catastrophic fear will destroy us. We need these moments of deliberately cultivating some comfort and ease. So where do we take refuge? Perhaps in the roots of our own integrity and conviction, in our need to do what is right and good out of love for all humanity, all air breathers. We can turn inward and find that inner sanctuary from which our good impulses arise. So here we are right now. We've decided to take some time out from the continual stream of demands and activity. I hope you're finding a comfortable position and feel safe enough to let your guard down and move inward. Right now, we're okay. Feeling the weight of your body sitting or lying here. You can give yourself the all clear signal to your autonomic nervous system. Honey, I say to myself, I'm okay right now. I can breathe and gravity's functioning. Our bodies are supported and we can give ourselves permission to rest for these few minutes. The breath breathes itself and there's no right or wrong way to breathe. And if you like, you can take a few really deep breaths to remind your diaphragm to participate in breathing. Here's the inhale and the exhale and the subtle transition in between. This breath and this moment just breathing itself with just enough energy and the attention that it rests gently on the movement of the breathing. And the attention can stay here with the breath or it can move to feel the body simply resting here, alive from head to toe. You can feel your head and your face. Can you relax your face? All the social masks can fall away in the privacy of this moment. Feeling your eyes resting and the breath at the nostrils. Feeling your mouth and your jaw, the cheeks. The lower jaw can just hang from the upper jaw. And feeling the ears and the little muscles around the ears. Hearing is passive and receptive. You cannot control the noise around you. Feeling the neck and the shoulders, the arms and the hands, the weight of the arms, the temperature of the hands. And here's the upper back and the chest, the middle of the back and the abdomen, the trunk of the body breathing. And if you like, you can move further inward and remember the deep root from which your desire to do good in the world grows. It's part of your deepest longing for all beings, moving inward to the source of hope and generosity. Using your own words or symbols to describe it. What is your source of inspiration? It's immovable and irrevocable source of inspiration. And the root of the word inspiration brings us back to the breath, this breath in this moment, breathing itself. And you can take in the sense of being here and the feeling of the breath and make is a practice, so this feeling becomes a palpable place of refuge and renewal. And then as you're ready, you can feel your legs and your feet supported, stable. And whenever you feel the weight of your feet on the floor or feel your breath, breathing all by itself, your body can remember this feeling of resting, of being grounded and stable. Or you can recall an image that feeds you with comfort and ease or a sense of potency. Or remember this place of inspiration. There's nowhere to go and nothing to do, just resting with your feet on the floor. Then return to the breath, which is still breathing all by itself. And when you open your eyes, notice what you see, shape and light and shadow. Very good.
Thank you, Rhonda, for once again inviting us into rest, into a practice of rest each week. I'm really excited that Asher could be with us today. I know Asher because he has a good sense of humor, and I sat down at the right table one day at a conference in Salt Lake City, of all places. And right now, Asher is the interfaith chaplain at Guilford College, a gospel minister with 15 years of experience in progressive social movements. And I think this is one of the best lines I've ever heard in a bio. He likes big ideas and small dogs. Asher, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, Kerry. Good afternoon and good morning to everyone. I'm going to set my timer so I do not go over. And asked to kind of reflect on how I resist burnout, I thought it would be a good idea to just kind of create a list of 4 points, and I'm just going to go down each of the points so I can stay within the time constraints. And a couple of these have been influenced by Daniel Hunter's work on finding steady ground, and you can find that information findingsteadyground.com. And I'll point out which one was influenced by his work. So number one, and this is not the number one thing I do, it's just number one on the list. So number one is remixing self-care. So self-care and self-compassion are two things that go hand in hand for me. So self-compassion is kind of what I think of self-forgiveness. As someone who's been a part of progressive movements and part of faith communities, I've learned the importance of forgiving others, but I'm still working on forgiving myself. So allowing myself to be human is a huge part of my self-care and how I resist burnout. And some of that is forgiving myself, but also forgiving movements, forgiving organizations, recognizing that I'm operating as a human and trusting myself and my talents to human organizations. So, in the same way that I want people to remember that I'm human, I sometimes err and make mistakes. Being forgiving with colleagues and friends as well is a huge part of self-compassion. So it's about being generous with yourself and others. But another part of remixing self-care is just kind of the regular things that people do as self-care. I'm often in activist communities and people talk about self-care and they list off like going for walks and drinking water. So those are all things that people are supposed to be doing, like as human beings at this point. You're supposed to be doing those things. But part of remixing self-care is putting in my own personal context. And it shed light on the importance of why it's self-care, particularly for those denied self and denied care. So the dominant narrative, which is a phrase I'm going to use quite a bit, the dominant narrative says that we should not have selves and we do not have selves worth caring for. So remixing self-care means that, yes, I'm going to be drinking water, yes, I'm going to be going for walks, but because of who I am in the world, that is a revolutionary act. So that's giving myself permission to do that and reminding myself that that is fighting oppression, that is taking my power back as a person of color, as a trans person, as a person on the margins, those things are revolutionary because I've been denied those things. And I want to point out there's a theology of sleep that's forming, partially because sleep deprivation, dehydration, those things impact everyone, but particularly people on the margins. So rethinking self-care is a revolutionary act. The second one is, and this is from Daniel Hunter's work, I will read, listen to, share a story about how others have resisted injustice. So I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God is God of the oppressed. So learning more about collective and individual resistance is a helpful reminder that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So reminding myself that historically and currently, people are resisting. And Thich Nhat Hanh talks about that being part of his understanding of spiritual ancestors. So I always like to learn more about other faith communities and historically how they have resisted, and count those as part of my spiritual ancestors, or part of my legacy, particularly as a person of faith doing this work, that it's not just myself and my community alone in a silo, but we're part of a larger story. The third point is pray. After all, I'm a person of faith, but I often forget to pray. I do a lot of what I call praying with my feet, which is organizing, but I forget the importance of prayer or meditation in my tradition, and that is talking to the divine. So it's an ongoing relationship. So remembering to kind of do my spiritual tune-up while I'm talking with people of faith often, work with communities of faith often, I often forget to do the personal work of doing the spiritual tune-up. The last one is remember that I'm a creative person. So this isn't about art. Oftentimes creativity is housed in the world of art. But I think, an ongoing phrase that my students use on campus is existence is resistance. So I think through our lives, we're creating counter narratives to what's called the dominant narrative or the master narrative. So by creating families, by creating communities that are working towards justice, that are working towards positivity, that's creating a counter narrative. And then of course includes some of the cultural work of creation, right, of music, of art. But I also like to think of myself as a creative person, even if I'm not doing those things, I'm creating community. So when I'm tired or lost, I remember that my life has been a creative process. And I am out of time, so I will stop there.
You packed a lot in though, so well done.
Thanks.
Asher, thank you so much for sharing those 4 points with us. And we'll make sure to find that Daniel Hunter link that you shared and put it in the Facebook group so other folks can find it too. And thank you again to Rhonda for leading us in today's meditation. May this week, with the fires burning outside us and within us, may this week may we practice making manifest these narratives of integrity and goodness for all beings in the world, and wanting goodness for all beings in the world. May we make those manifest in the world, and also find rest in them and ease in them and forgiveness in them. Thanks, folks, for calling in today. I want to remind you to please post a picture or a word or a thought about what's on your heart or mind after today's call into the Resist Burnout Facebook group. And you're welcome to do that if you're listening later in the week also. And I look forward to continuing this practice with you next week, same time, same place, same phone number, I guess. Thanks, everybody, and please take care of yourselves this week.